quite simply, All IP is Openreach's plans to switch off the PSTN network as we know it today, and do that by December 2025. So the best way for me to explain this is to relate it to your own property. So in your own property, you're going to have a master socket that looks something like this. And into your master socket, you would plug in your phone and you would plug in your broadband. So that's what most people have in domestic and commercial installations. As we move over to All IP, what's going to happen is we're all going to get a new faceplate for this master socket. And then the only thing that will plug into the new master socket is a new router that will be provided by the telecoms provider. And anything else that requires any kind of connectivity, phones, Sonos, PlayStations, security systems, will have to connect to the new router, and the router's connected to the new master socket. So phone calls, for example, would now be voice over IP, as opposed to using the traditional PSTN that we've got today. So the planned switch off is December 2025. The mass migration will start in 2022. But there are a couple of key trials that have just started. The first trial is in Salisbury. Salisbury is really interesting because in Salisbury, in 25,000 domestic and commercial premises, they're actually taking fibre to the front door. So there'll be no copper connectivity whatsoever in Salisbury. It'll be fibre from the premises through to the exchange. The other trial that's taking place is in Mildenhall, which is in Suffolk. And what they're going to do in Mildenhall is they're going to keep the copper that you have in your house today, and that copper will go to a green cabinet on the street. What they'll then do is they will disconnect that copper from the current cabinet, and they will reconnect the copper to a new fibre cabinet. So you'll have copper from your house to the cabinet, and then fibre going through to the exchange. So the network that we're going to have is going to look very different to what we currently have today. And this is just a brief roadmap of what things are going to look like. So what we see here is that Openreach are going to launch their broadband-only services in March 2020. This is really important now, is they're going to withdraw PSTN from sale in October 2023. The reason why this is important is we know that PSTN is going to get switched off in December 2025. We know we're going to start migrating people in 2022, but they're still going to sell PSTN new connections. They're going to switch off the PSTN network totally in December 2025. So then we'll look at BT. BT have launched their broadband-only service at the end of last year, beginning of this year, and it's now going to be, voice will be voice over IP. This next part is quite important, is that the BT hub, the new router that BT will provide, will have the ability to support some PSTN devices. So this is the CSL router. This isn't the router that you'll get from BT, but this is the best way for me to explain what that PSTN support looks like. So what will happen is that when you get the new router from the telecoms provider, if they provide it, it will have a PSTN analog switch on the back. So what that means is you could take, for example, a PSTN dual-com device, and you could connect the PSTN terminals of the dual-com unit to the PSTN port that's on the back of the router. Or you can connect the IP side of the dual-com to the back of the router. But at some point, the industry will have to go to their existing dual-coms and either connect the PSTN terminals to the new router or the IP path to the new router. So we've obviously got a challenge there as to what we would do with that. Sky and Talk haven't announced any plans as to what they're going to do as of yet. Kcom over in Hull, they're going to commence this year, and Virgin Media will roughly follow the same as what BT do. The next part is really important. So Ofcom are fully supportive of the switch to all IP, and I think this has been demonstrated over the last few months. Is many of us are now having to work from home. That's putting extra strain on that broadband connectivity. The likes of Netflix and Amazon are stopping people watching in 4K and in HD, and it's now just standard definition because they have to manage the amount of bandwidth that we're getting into our homes. So I believe that the drive to move over to all IP will now happen a lot quicker because we need to be able to provide that reliable connectivity within those broadband services. And what's also very important here is consultation on copper closure has now commenced between Ofcom and Openreach. So what that basically means is that if any signalling product that relies on copper to go from the premises to the exchange, once copper's closed, that will no longer operate correctly. So the two key challenges that we see here are digital communicators, of which there are 800,000 digis installed, not just in security systems, but in fire alarms, in ward and call systems, in the healthcare marketplace, even lift alarms. When you're in a lift and the lift breaks down and you press the button, in many cases that's connected to a digital communicator. So when we move to the All IP platform, it's unlikely that those digital communicators will work, as the same with some of those legacy products that rely on that copper infrastructure. And this is where the real opportunity is, because as a wider industry, we need to address those signaling devices that won't work on the All IP platform. So at some point, we need to advise our customers that we're going to move them onto the latest technology. But the real opportunity, I believe, that comes here is that we know we need to swap out these devices at some point between now and potentially 2022. But the real opportunity is that we as a wider industry need to ensure that as many of our security systems are now set up for upload, download, remote service and diagnostics, because we need to be able to demonstrate to business owners, to end users, that we can continue to maintain their security systems remotely. That could be one remote maintenance a year and one physical visit a year, the ability to emit zones, change user codes, etc. So by replacing the old technology, digital communicators, the old legacy products that rely on copper technology, not only do we give our end users the latest technology, but panel dependent, we also get them set up for being able to provide upload, download, remote service and diagnostics. So just a couple of the options that we've got here. So for the digital communicators, the 800,000 of them, we've got the DigiAir Pro. We discussed this in the Pro webinar we did a couple of weeks ago. Fantastic product. So radio only, using 4G, 3G and 2G technology, but it also comes with 2 roaming SIMs. So an active roaming SIM and a standby roaming SIM. And just to explain that, we do often get asked about having 2 roaming SIMs. Every roaming SIM belongs to a network provider. And if you get a localized issue, then that SIM card will roam onto another mast or another network. But if the company that own that SIM, so Tele2, for example, if they had a core network outage, that could impact the ability for that SIM to get permissions to roam. So what we do on the single path solution is we now include a failover SIM. So this is a great opportunity to upgrade those digital communicator customers onto DigiAir Pro using 4G, 3G and 2G, all the latest technology. But depending on what panel you're installing it onto as well, you now get remote connectivity to that intruder system so that you can carry on to support your customers should we have any challenges in the future with obviously restrictions and lockdown. The second option that we've got when we look at some of the legacy systems that operate at a higher grade is we've now got the dual radio option. So again, exactly the same piece of hardware, but what we do is we introduce a second 4G module with its own roaming SIM on a completely separate and diverse roaming platform. So we've now actually got 3 roaming SIMs, all working on different networks and diverse platforms. And this would be an ideal replacement for any of those legacy systems, as I say, that operate at a higher level to what digital communicators do. As a company, CSL have been dealing with installers on these upgrade programs for over a decade now. We've worked alongside hundreds of installers. And the one thing I would strongly recommend would be to speak to the relevant salesperson that looks after your area, so that we can cover in more detail some of the processes that we put in place to support you doing these upgrades. And again, just to reiterate, is at some point we need to replace these older systems because they will not work on the new All IP platform. So speak to your CSL salesperson and we can cover this in more details. We can help you with the scheduling and also help put together any letters that you may want to send through to your end users.